I am excited to welcome David from Recall.ai, who's joining me today, fresh off the announcement of a huge Series B. So David, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Aaron. It's great to be here.
You have an incredible story that I'm excited for everybody to be able to hear. And I think there's a lot of really interesting lessons to take from it. Maybe first, why don't you give people an overview? What is Recall.ai? And give us like the current state of the business.
Of course. So Recall is the API for meeting recording. We make it easy for developers to capture real-time audio and video from Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, in-person conversations, phone calls, all these different sources of conversation data. So we're the infrastructure layer that over 1,000 companies uses to tap into this data set. And we are today nearly at 20 million in revenue with a team of less than 30 people. We run this infrastructure at massive scale. We power over 1,000 companies in the space. So we're launching 8 million EC2 instances every month. We're processing 3 terabytes per second of raw video at peak load every single day. And it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a great part being an infrastructure component in over 1,000 great AI companies.
And I think what's even more interesting is like you're doing it with not very many people, right?
That is correct. So we are a team of less than 30 in total, primarily in SF, in-person in SF. But it's been really exciting because we're just running this infrastructure at such large scale. We're larger than 99.999% of companies on AWS, and we are just getting started. I mean, we've grown our raw usage over 10x in the last 18 months. And we're going to grow another 10x in the next 18 months. And that's just going to be just a super exciting engineering problem and a super exciting space to be in.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so it didn't start like that though. You went through a lot of stuff in the early days getting it to this point. So why don't you tell us about the early days of just getting this started? And my first interaction with you was you actually won a YC Hackathon. I think this was in 2019, that guaranteed you an interview at YC, right? I think you were like 19 years old, is that right?
I was 19 years old. I was studying at the University of Waterloo. I was studying software engineering there. And when I was in high school, I had done a lot of hackathons. And when I heard YC had a hackathon, I was like, this is amazing. I should do this. At the time, I had done one internship. I had some money saved up. So I spent all of my cash on a flight to Mountain View to go and attend this hackathon. And we were there and we built a thing and we presented it. And I remember I was up there on stage and Michael Seibel was grilling me with questions about how is this going to be a viable business. And I was like, this is really cool. And we ended up winning that hackathon and getting this interview. And that was not actually what I expected. I didn't expect to win. I was like, I'm going to go and do this YC hackathon. I'm going to have a lot of fun. But we ended up winning, and that turned my plans and schedules on its head because I knew I wanted to start a startup. That's the reason I was studying software engineering. That's the reason I was at Waterloo. But I didn't think I'd get a YC interview so soon. So we had, this was in November, I believe, and then we had the interview scheduled in 3 weeks, and I took all of my plans and I threw them out the window. And I spent those 3 weeks working on getting that hackathon project into YC interview ready shape. So we went to all the people we knew across campus and we tried to sell them a $20 a month license for this thing so we could have some users. We spent all night just writing code and trying to get the thing to work and get enough features so we could start selling it to these folks. And when the interview actually rolled around, it was scheduled the week of my exams. So at Waterloo, I was taking 6 courses. I had 6 exams that week, 2 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and 2 on Wednesday. And I remember the interview was on Tuesday, in person, in Mountain View, and I was going to school in Canada. I didn't go to any of my exams. I put another flight on the credit card and I went and interviewed for the Y Combinator batch in Mountain View in person. Skipped out on all the exams. Thankfully, we got in and I joined the Winter 20 batch about 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah, I remember it very vividly, actually, the interview with you. You had a different co-founder at the time.
Yeah.
And then I think you had a different co-founder during the batch. And you have now your long-term co-founder, Amanda, who joined shortly after the batch ended. Talk about what it was like working with different people throughout that process, and what signals you saw that told you that maybe one co-founder wasn't working, and then the signals that you saw that ultimately convinced you that, the relationship with Amanda was the right thing?
I mean, all of the people that I worked with, I have deep respect for, and they've gone on to do great things, and they've gone on to accomplish a lot. I think the first time around, the thing that was just really tough was doing YC meant leaving college. And that's a big decision. I think it's become more popular nowadays for people to leave college early. I think I'm atypical amongst the dropouts that I actually liked college a lot. And a lot of the friends that I had were quite studious and took it quite seriously. And I think the original person I did the interview with, who I won the hackathon with, just didn't want to leave college because that was not the path that he wanted to set his life down. And I respect that. And he's gone on to do great things. I ended up working with a different friend during the batch. And we worked on this thing. We tried to get it in good shape. And then this was 2020 and COVID hit. The world got turned on its head. And I think this other friend of mine looked around and said, well, all this crazy stuff is happening. I want to, get my life and my career on a more stable track. I'm going to go and leave this company. I'm going to go back to Waterloo. It's going to be remote. That's going to be fine. And he's, again, gone on to do great things. And he's doing well nowadays. But there's a period of time in the middle where I was a solo founder for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months. And I think the discussion with Amanda on joining the company full-time, she had helped us with getting some stuff put together, building some materials for the first product we shipped, putting the website, getting that 0 to 1, doing some of the design for it. And I think a big part of the decision in the conversation is actually getting aligned on what is the reason we are doing this startup? What is the reason we are working on this thing together? And what is the level of commitment we'll have to it? What are we going to do when things are not going as planned? And I think having a really clear idea of that, of like, the reason we're building this thing is we want to build a great software company. If things aren't going as planned, that is the natural state of a startup. If things are going as planned, that's amazing and you should celebrate it, but you shouldn't expect that. And we are going to keep working on this thing until it works. I think that was a very important agreement to come to.
Yeah. One of the questions I ask co-founders that have recently met each other is, what's the most difficult conversation you've had with each other so far? And so, yeah, you're right. Like, the steady state is lots of things going wrong, and there's a lot that you're going to have to work through together. A lot of, conflict, and, not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just the steady state of things. Talk about your first fundraise. This was the early days. You were not working on this product, I believe, right? And so talk a little bit about what that was like and what you had to go through there to get that done.
So the journey to building Recall is that in 2020, Amanda and I first started by building a call recorder. So this was pre-LLMs. This was very early days of video conferencing being a wide, popular thing for the general tech group of people. And we built this call recorder because, well, in the past, we had done a ton of user research. And we ended up having pages and pages of notes, gigabytes and gigabytes of recordings, but it was really hard to work with this content. So we built this recorder, and we ran that product for nearly 3 years. Over those 3 years, we got really good at running that infrastructure. We ended up spending 70 or 80% of all our engineering effort on the infrastructure. And that's not because we wanted to, it's because we had to. The infrastructure to record that data was just so critical, because if it went down for even a moment, our customers would lose critical recordings that they could never get back. So reliability and stability and scalability, that was just so important to our customers that we spent an enormous amount of time on that. At the same time, what was going on was large language models were evolving at a frightening pace. I remember the first version of ChatGPT, you would talk to it and it would give you back something semi-coherent. And within 9 months, you were getting something which you could talk to, and it would sort of resemble a human. And 9 months after that, it was genuinely really good. And we were seeing all these companies building new products on top of unstructured conversation data using large language models. LLMs enabled these companies to build products that 18 months ago would have been magic. It would have been beyond the frontier of AI research. And we realized we have really good infrastructure that every single one of these companies needs. So we pivoted to Recall. We took the infrastructure we built and we started selling it as an API. And when we first started doing that, we pivoted in February of 2022. Before that, we had tried to raise around, we actually deferred demo day and we tried to raise around for this call recorder, and that didn't go well. We spent 4 months that first time raising, and we raised about $160K for that call recording product. And when we raised the first round for Recall, that was also not easy. We spent maybe 8 or 9 months fundraising total, and we had no connections. We were two random people living in Canada. COVID was happening, everything was shut down. And I talked to over 120 investors for that seed round. We raised about $2.5 million. And every single one of those investors, we had to get an intro to them from another founder. So we sent over 1,000 emails to founders, handwritten over the course of 8 or 9 months to get these 120 meetings that ended up being maybe around 10 investments. And those investors did very, very well. But it was an enormous amount of effort in the early days to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I think most founders maybe don't appreciate the level of perseverance that is required. And I think your story embodies that. Your first round, you went out, you spent 4 months, and how much did you raise?
160K.
160K for 4 months. 3 months in, most people would have given up and said, well, you know, nobody wants this or whatever, and maybe I should just get back to work or something. And you refused. And you kept going until you were able to raise a little bit of money that, you know, kept things going. And then when you pivoted, I mean, you spent 8 months raising to get your first seed round of $2 million at a time when, you know, most people go out for 2 weeks or something like that. And if they don't immediately have the money that they need, then they turn back around. So, you know, that's one thing that always sticks with me about your story is just you refuse to give up. And you just keep going at, you know, whatever the goal is. In these instances, it was fundraising, but also in building your product and making that grow. And so talk about, you had built this infrastructure for yourself. You'd raised a seed round now. You know, what convinced you that you were actually on the right track in building this infrastructure for everybody else?
So the thing that convinced me that I was on the right track was that I knew at a very deep, visceral level how hard this problem was and how painful it was for the people running this infrastructure, because I myself had ran this infrastructure in production at scale for 3 years. I was the one on call. I was the one responding to the angry customers. I was the one updating the infrastructure when we scaled to new levels that our previous infrastructure couldn't support. And I just had this very deep conviction that this was a real problem because I had lived it for so long. For the 5 or 6 month period after we launched that call recording product way back in 2020, I actually had nightmares about the infrastructure for 5 or 6 months. And these are literal nightmares. Like I'd wake up in the middle of the night dreaming that I got paged. So I knew this was a hard problem. And I knew that despite what anyone would say, that this was real and this was something that needed to be solved.
It makes it easier to find customers too, because you just have to find people that look like you at the time, right?
We knew a lot about the space going in because we had been in that space and vigorously competed for 3 years. So we knew all of the other players. And the first thing we did when we pivoted to this infrastructure product is we emailed all of our old competitors. And we said, hey, you know us, we're pivoting, we're going to be infrastructure, and let us take this off your hands. And the majority of people ignored us. They thought we were trying to, pull some sort of competitive trick, but there was a few people who trusted us and said, yes, I don't want to deal with this, take this off my hands. And we helped them massively reduce the amount of engineering work they were wasting on this, and it caught on. The other competitors in the space saw their competitors moving faster because they were no longer burdened with this infrastructure. And within a year or two after launching, it just became standard to use something like Recall to work with this data because everybody just saw how much faster you could move when you didn't have to build this yourself.
You are an engineer from Waterloo, had never done sales before. And now you're selling to a lot of these really big customers that are paying you lots of money.
Yeah.
How did you learn to get good at sales?
That's a great question. And we're working with some fantastic customers today. We're working with HubSpot, with ClickUp, with Monday.com, a bunch of amazing companies, and selling to these companies is not easy. They're great companies. They want to build new things. They want to innovate. But sales is a skill, and it's a skill that you need to develop. Honestly, the way that we got good with sales was we just did a lot of it. So the first $2 million in revenue that we closed was pure outbound and 100% done by Amanda, my co-founder. And we were on all these sales calls. I think a lot of engineers and engineering-minded founders have a weird idea of sales. They think it's some sort of black magic. They think it's manipulative, but that's not true at all. What sales is, it's two things. It's the first part is showing someone the value of what you're building and explaining to them the value of what you're building in a clear and compelling way. And the second part of that, it's helping them navigate their own company process so they can get your solution out into the wild. And it's really just these two things. And it's not magic. It's not manipulative. You're helping someone realize the value of your product. It's just a critical part of delivering real value. So we just did a lot of it. We got good at it through repetition. And I think anyone can do sales.
Yeah, that's cool. What's interesting is, sometimes founders have the instinct of like, well, I'm going to hire a head of sales or hire these sales reps or something. And it sounds like you guys were just like, no, we're going to do it for a long time. And I think that's actually something that has been true throughout all of your company. You have nearly 20 million in ARR as of August 2025 here, growing at an incredible rate year over year, and we'll continue that growth over the next year and beyond. And you've done it all with, how many employees do you have right now?
Less than 30.
Less than 30 employees. Yeah. The revenue per employee of that is like off the charts. Is that something that you think about? Do you want to intentionally be lean as you're growing this company? Or is that just what you've been forced to work with?
I think the lesson that we've learned is that by hiring very smart, very driven people, you can go a very, very long way. The reason that we have a very lean team is because our bar for talent is very high. We are in a deeply complex technical space. We are running infrastructure at the scales at which very few other companies in the world do. Our engineers also own a lot of the product. They make product decisions. They talk to customers. And when you're hiring this kind of person, which is they're a super good low-level systems programmer, they can talk to customers, they can be on sales calls, they can help close an enterprise deal. It's this very rare kind of person, but they can do so much. There's a lot of structure and process that you don't need if you have a group of people you really trust and who can really handle not only the work in front of them, but getting that outcome accomplished, getting that new product out into the market, getting that upset customer satisfied and delighted with the service. One of the things that's just been really amazing for us is hiring people who've been startup founders before. More than half of our engineering team has been previous startup founders. And like a big part of that is really asking someone, well, what's the reason you're looking to join this company? What's your motivation? I think the thing that's worked really well for us is hiring people who want to push themselves, who want to learn new things, who see working at Recall as an opportunity to achieve something great. I think that's the kind of motivation that gets you excited about doing things outside your job description, that gets you excited about learning about the customer, that gets you excited about understanding how companies and sales and marketing and all of this stuff works. I think that's sort of the core of building a very high agency team. It's just people who can own these big projects.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's almost like full stack employees or something. You don't want to just put people in the box of like, you're just an engineer, you're just this or you're just that. Not only do you have the high bar to get in, but it sounds like you have the high bar of the expectations that you hold all of your employees to, which is you're not just responsible for just writing the code. You need to be talking to the customers, helping us close deals. Like it's a total package, because when you can do that, it forces everybody to, raise their own personal bar and what they can accomplish.
The thing that gets harder as your company grows, and Alexander Wang has written a great article about this, but every person-to-person handoff, you lose 90% of the information and 90% of the nuance. And the other side of that is if you can have a single person who can do more than one thing, if you can have an engineer who can not only write the code, but also get customers to use that product or code that they've built, you've gained a massive amount of efficiency and you've gained a massive amount of quality because you're avoiding this 90% loss as you pass this work between people.
It's like, here's this rocket ship. There's a limited number of seats. We're going to ask you to do a lot, though, if you want a seat on this thing. What's next for Recall.ai, and where do you see the next couple years going? It's obviously an exciting time, both in the industry, but it seems like you guys have a really interesting opportunity here in front of you.
I mean, I feel like it's probably the most exciting time to be in technology in the history of humanity, which I feel grateful for. I think specifically with what we're working with, it's become just very, very clear that every AI company is going to need conversations as a fundamental data set to feed their AI. There's 5 times more words spoken at work every year than all the words on the entire internet. And if you think about any company, 99% of all the context in that company never gets written down. It's not in the docs, it's not in the issue tracker, it's in conversation from person to person. And AI needs that context to be effective. And what we're seeing is every AI company is tapping into conversations as a source of data. So we're working with now over 1,000 companies in a wide variety of industries that are using this data to feed their models. And what's next for us is really expanding the surface area of the data we help people capture and expanding the ways we help them work with that data. So one of the new products we launched is a desktop recording SDK. So today we have a product that lets you send a bot into a meeting. We have a new product that lets you record meetings and conversations without a bot. So it's just a software package that you can integrate into a desktop app. It pulls the data from meetings happening on the person's computer. It can record meetings that are happening ambiently in the room if you're doing in-person meetings. And this unlocks a whole new source of data for our customers. We're going to be building phone call recording as well, mobile recording, being able to store the data, query it, pre-process it. Whenever you're working with conversation data, there's this huge amount of infrastructure that's attached to it. And these SaaS companies and AI companies shouldn't be building this infrastructure. They should be focusing on the parts of their product that make them unique, that help them win in the market.
Absolutely. It's easy, I think, for people that don't really understand what you're doing to think of you as like a note-taking company, infrastructure company, but it's so much more than that. You're really this fundamental AI data layer that gives the context on all these conversations that is going to be required by every company of the future that wants to build anything meaningful.
Like if you have a new employee join your company, right? It's not like they can read all of the documentation and then be fully effective. They have to spend 3 months talking to people. And AI is the same way. The AI can't just read all your docs and become effective. It needs to know all of the context passing human to human, because that's where all the information inside an organization is actually stored.
Absolutely. And you just raised a large round to go after this and keep expanding. Talk a little bit about your hiring now. Yeah. What roles are you looking for? And you said a little bit about it earlier, but what types of people are you looking for to come and join the team?
We are hiring across basically every role. So engineering, marketing, sales, product. The core of what we're looking for is high agency people, and people who see working as a startup as an opportunity to push themselves and accomplish something great. I think we're in a really unique position where we're the fundamental infrastructure layer for this new wave of AI companies that's springing up. It means that we get to see a lot of the market. It means we get to see a lot of the advances 6 months, 9 months before they get publicly released. It also means the standards are super high. We are critical infrastructure for companies that are 10, 100, or 1,000 times larger than us by headcount or by revenue. So it's a really intense sort of responsibility to have as a company. But I think the outcome of that is it's a place where we can do really great work, and it's a place where we can be a fundamental contributor to the next generation of software.
So what would your advice be to founders that are just starting out now based on your experience?
My advice would be, don't give up. It's interesting and nuanced advice because I think the first layer of it is, well, if you give up, you can't succeed. That one's obvious. But I think the layer underneath is that what I experienced is that when I first started a company, I was doing 20 things wrong. And to see success, you have to do all of these things right. And it just takes time to learn about your space, to build your skills, to meet people, to develop connections, to understand all of these things. It takes time to be at a place where you can run a very successful and fast-growing company. And I think lots of people give up before they get there. So my advice would be, don't give up, stick through it. And one adjacent piece to that is, I think it takes maybe at least a year to know whether a product is going to be successful or not. And this is something that I didn't expect. I thought that you'd build a product, you'd launch it into the market, and then 3 months later, you'd know, is this thing going to succeed or not? But I think after what I've experienced, it takes at least a year.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started working here at YC, I used to think if founders hadn't figured it out and it wasn't on this crazy trajectory by demo day, like, man, they were in trouble.
Yeah.
And I've since learned that that's actually the very rare thing. And the much more common thing is that it actually takes, 1 to 2 years, sometimes even longer after the batch to really get things working. And it's just a lot of lead bullets every single day, one foot in front of the other, and sticking with it, to your point, to figure it out. And I think your story has embodied that. David, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Aaron. It's been great being here.